Hello, everybody. Is everybody sick of snow? No. Good moisture, but I'm ready for spring. Like, he's been telling me every time I say I love snow, he's like, it could just rain.
It can
Which
rain
is
in
true. So welcome, everybody. My name is Rich Kistler with the Master Gardeners. There's a few Master Gardeners in here. So if you guys have any questions about the Master Gardeners, raise your hand if you're a Master Gardener. You talk to one of these people and they'll tell you about the class. We're not going to do a class this spring and summer, but you can start doing some activities with us, start on your hours, and when we start having the classes again, then you can take the class. So if you're interested in becoming a Master Gardener, it's a great program. You volunteer your hours, you learn a lot of stuff. We put on the series and stuff too, so it's a good little thing. Did everybody get his flyer? Okay, and then the cards. So on the back of the cards, did everybody get one of these? So it kind of has the dates of what activities. If it doesn't have a place or a date, if you're on Facebook, go to Facebook and it will tell you where, if we're here or somewhere else or what. So we'll always watch our Facebooks. We record too, and we share that on Facebook also. Okay. Any questions before we get started? So there's some water over here. The bathroom's over here. So I'd like to introduce. This is Jay Richards with Jay Giants. He's on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, Finding Jay Giants is on there. You'll see the pictures. He's got some of the pictures here, but he is fun to watch on Facebook and stuff. So
Well, I'd like to turn entertaining.
So turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. Do we want to click this light off
Yes.
up here? All right, so as
Is
Rich
that
said,
too dark? Which one? That okay?
all right, cool. As Rich said, I am Jay Richard. I live in Worland, just over the hill over here. It's in the Bighorn Basin up there. Where it's cold, it's an ice box where we live. It's 15 below 0 when I left this morning, so it was 27 in Buffalo when I got over the hill. So your wind, there is some benefits that go with it. We don't have wind, so we have the cold. So I grow giant pumpkins. I've been at it around 8 or 10 years. Competitively growing them about 8 or 10 years. I've been growing pumpkins since 2003 when my daughter was a year old. I did the same thing everybody else does. I went to the hardware store, bought a big max seed, threw it in the garden, threw the sprinkler on it, grew a pumpkin about that big. And at Halloween time, I cut a hole in the top of it into triangle eyeballs and everything. I dropped my little girl down in it, got a picture of her in there like this. Well, I'm 20 years old now, and to do that, I've had to increase the size of the pumpkins every year if I'm going to stuff her in one. So, and so far I've been able to do that. She's done growing, but I'm not. So with that being said, that's how I got started. The kind of what we're going to do today is I'm one of these people that's real easy, particularly in this subject, for me to chase off a lot of rabbit trails. So I'll give you just kind of a roadmap. What I want to do here is do about a 10-minute what the plan is here. I've got a little slideshow we'll go down through. If you have questions, write them down. There's going to be plenty of time. I'll make myself available as long as necessary today to get any or all questions. At least some kind of response. May not be an answer. There'll be some kind of response. We'll get down through all those. We get through this because there's a lot of core information here that I like to say that growing pumpkins, there's as many different ways to grow pumpkins as there are people growing them and places that they're growing them. But there are some things, just like raising a kid, that you really do need to get right. And we'll hit a lot of that through these slides. And that'll take some of the pains out of the growing pains out of this and get you off to a good start. And then once we get through this little slideshow, we'll kind of go off the cuff and we'll talk a little more about each of the things a little bit deeper. But the slideshow is just kind of to get the wheels turning and see what a growing season looks like from beginning to end, where we're starting, what the goal is at the end, and maybe we'll get some thoughts going for you, and then we'll take whatever time is necessary. I'll go through a little more in depth on getting them started, fertilizing, watering, pruning, all that good stuff. So we're going to commence with that right away. So again, I am Jay. You can check me out on Jay's Giants on Facebook. That's the media that I've chosen to do my communications for. We do a lot of things A lot of the events that we do, I'll be doing the same class in Portland here in about 3 weeks. That's home for me, and we'll have pretty much the same thing. So if you follow along with how the growing season goes, there's archives. I try not to put an overloaded amount of information on there, so if you're relevant to what we're doing here, you can kind of go back chronologically and see how they go. So, next slide, Rich, please. So, a little hard to see, but sometimes pumpkins make a really good place to rest, and let's hit that next one up, please. All right, so first things first. You all right there? Okay. The very first thing we got to have here is we've got to start out with genetics. We have to have a seed that's capable of producing a giant pumpkin. This is what they look like. I've got plenty of them. There'll be lots of them to give away here at the end, no problem. But even the seeds are big in these things. The ones you buy at the hardware store or you order online or whatever, don't mess with them. They're okay, they're fine, but they're farm grown. They probably don't have the pedigree that these do. Just like a horse or a dog or a person, we can follow the family tree back on these 20 generations and know who grew them, what color they were, who the mom was, who the dad was, what they weighed, and everything about it. We can follow these genetics back on all these seeds for generations and generations. And when you do that, you can see some trends that work and things that'll work for you. Sometimes you can pick a color or a shape and have maybe a chance of hitting that. So genetics are number one. We've got to have, we can't put a radish seed in there and expect it to grow a cucumber. It's not going to happen. So we've got to grow a seed that's capable of producing a giant pumpkin. So that's where we're going to start with the genetics of the seeds. These are the ones I grew last year. You can see what's written on them. They'll all have a name, and you'll probably hear me refer to them and say, like this one down here is a 1676 new, and it's a 2350 Geiger by a 2,005-pound Heist. That's who mom and dad were. So we know that they've got good genetics in them. So it doesn't guarantee any results, but you know that the seed, the genetics in the seed is capable of producing that. So can I have the next one, please? Huge, huge feeders. I tell everybody when it comes to compost, when you add your compost, take what you think it needs, double it, and then add some more. And then measure it and see where you are. I add, that dump trailer holds 7 cubic yards. I add 6 inches of composted horse manure every year on top of my pumpkin patch. Every year, without even testing anything, that's what I do. I dump it on there every fall and work it into the soil. That's a lot of compost. That's 6 inches deep over a 900 square foot area. The pumpkins themselves are huge. The pumpkins get big, the vines are big, the plants are big, the leaves are big, the stumps are big where they come out of the ground. I would put maybe 1.5 plants in this room. That's how big they get. You probably put 2 in here, but that's how big they get. It takes a 2-car garage sized plant, around 800 square feet, to grow a 2,000-pound pumpkin. You can grow a really, really nice pumpkin, 500, 700,000-pound pumpkin in 400 square feet, a 20 by 20 area. Very, very doable. But I'm going to tell you, if you don't have at least a 10 by 15 area for one plant, you're going to be disappointed because it's going to take over your backyard, the neighbor's fence, into the alley. They grow like crazy. So at least 150 square feet is the absolute bare minimum to try to grow one of these things.
Have you cut the runners off?
You can, but if you want it to have any kind of size, you've got to have a big plant to make a big pumpkin. We don't grow great big pumpkins on little big plants. So, but at least a 10 by 15 is bare minimum. That's bare minimum. So the compost, I use horse manure. There's every different kind of animal out there makes their own manure. My soil tends to have a lot of clay in it. I like horse manure because it has a lot of fibers. Horses don't digest well. So I like horse manure. It really helps with my clay soil. We're shooting for about an 8% organic material in your soil for giant pumpkins. That seems to kind of be a sweet spot for me. Someplace between 8 and 10% or more. is good. So, all right, let's have the next one. Okay, so we don't go to the doctor and say, I need a pill. Just give me the same pill you gave the other guy too. I'll take that one. That's the one I want. We don't go to the doctor and just take a pill. And we don't just throw fertilizer at the soil without testing it. There's no way to know. People ask me every single day, every single time. It's probably the number one question I get. What do you feed them? I feed them what Western Laboratories tells me to feed them. Western Laboratories, I'm not endorsed by them, I'm not sponsored by them, but they're the best soil testing company you'll find for giant pumpkins, period. There's no discussion. They are the best. They're in Parma, Idaho. They have a program specific to giant pumpkins. That's what's on the bottom down here, the recommendations. I can help you read soil tests, whatever. It looks like a lot. I test every year over and over and over again. That's why I know what's in the soil. That's why I know what to feed them. All these are soil tests year after year. Sometimes, like in this case here, I tested it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a single year. Also sent tissue samples off at the same time. So we gotta know what's in the soil before we just start throwing nitrogen at it. Oh, well, my friend Bob uses this and he grows good stuff. Well, maybe Bob's lucky that whatever he's feeding it's working, but your soil is probably gonna be different. You might go 30 feet and Bob couldn't grow what he's growing, because you've gotta test your soil. And it's really, really, really simple to do. The soil test goes in a bag like this. It's real simple. You take a little bit of soil from all over the place where you're gonna grow, a handful here and there, put it in the bag, you mail it to Western Laboratories or the lab of your choice, and in a few short days, they're gonna send it, they'll email you back what's in your soil and what their recommendations are. It'll save you a ton of money and a lot of frustration. Your success will go, you can't even imagine how, and it doesn't matter just with pumpkins. Do this with your garden. There's no way to know what you're trying to grow lettuce in. Why is my lettuce not doing well? Or why are my potatoes not producing like I think they should? It comes out of the soil. The plant is simply the vehicle that we're using to move the nutrients from the water, or the water and the nutrients from the soil to what we're trying to grow. And we've got to get that soil balanced. There's only one way, and I just can't stress it enough. Don't throw any fertilizer down until you test your soil. It's $50. And it's the best $50 you'll spend on your garden all year long, I'll guarantee you. So don't be afraid of doing it. It's not magic, it's not something that's voodoo that, oh, only so-and-so, they only, no. Just do it. Once you do it once, you'll see, oh, wow, this is what I need to do. I already have tons of nitrogen, I don't need to add any more. That's why my plants look great, but I can't grow anything. Well, my nitrogen's sky high, and I just keep adding nitrogen because I want it to grow more. Well, the plants grow like crazy, but you're not producing anything. So it's very, very, very important. I cannot stress that enough, particularly with the giant pumpkins. You've got to do a soil test. So the goal here is to get the soil balanced. Where we live, and here also, we're at the bottom of the Sundance Sea, and our soil over there tends to have a very high calcium content, and I assume that you guys are probably not that different over here. And if you were to measure, do a soil test, you can find out your calcium is probably sky high. And if you're like us, you have no iron, you're going to find out that the pH is going to be about 8.5. The native soil, whatever, that tends to be very regional. At least in our area, you can at least know those things are going to be that way. pH is going to be high, the clays are going to be high, and the calcium is going to be off the charts. The salts are probably going to be high too. But the goal is we can't take things out of the soil. If I add a whole bunch of phosphorus, I can't take it back out. I've got to add other things to try to bring it up into a proportion with one another. So the goal is to get balanced soil, and that's what this test is going to tell us. So we're going to do that. The other thing is you never want to add a lot all at once. Pumpkins are heavy, heavy feeders. The plant will grow 12 inches a day in every direction once it gets going. They'll get out 30 to 40 feet. The plant will very easily grow very, very rapidly. Heavy feeders, lots of water, lots of food, but you don't want to feed them a whole bunch all at once and then starve them for a few days. It'll look like that. That is not good. you want to feed them a little bit very often. So. Okay, next one, please. So if you have soil test questions, write those down, because we're going to spend more time on that, but I want to get through this because the soil test is that important. The third element that we've got genetics, we've got our soil. The other one we really can't control is the weather. We can influence it. We can put up protection, we can put up windbreaks, we can put up shade, we can put up whatever we need to protect it. We can help with it. We can influence the weather, but we can't control it. You can't control a 2-inch rainstorm that hits you out of the blue and floods your pumpkin patch. You can't control that. But you can learn from it and go, well, next year I need to put it up on the hill, which mine's on the hill. So those are some of the large elements. Have the next one, please. Okay, wait. Oh, no, back up. You're right. Okay. Yeah, you're good.
Right there?
Got one more. Sorry about that. Okay. So, got to have a good start. We've got to get these things in the ground. We've got to get them going. Typically, it's about 75 to 80 days from germination. That's what a germinated seed looks like. One of these. Right on the pointy end of the seed, all the seed coat is off of it. And when we're done here, I'll show you how to get that seed coat off of these things. That's about 26 hours from a dry seed to that. How I do it very rapidly. And the reason I do it this way is because it speeds the process up. It takes the guesswork out. If I take that seed and I soak it in water for a couple hours, and I put it in the soil, and I put it over someplace warm, and I wait, and I wait, and I wait for a week, and then I start to wonder, and then I start to pick at it, and then after a couple days, I finally pull it out and look, and the seed was no good. Well, I just wasted the whole week. So I germinate my seeds. This is actually what I germinated that plant in. And I write on there what seed it is, even the time that I did it, because they go fast. And all I do is I take, and I'll show you how to do it. I'm not going to do it right this second. We'll do it here in a little while. I sand the edge of the seed, and I soak it. I put it in this paper towel. I lay it over. I fold it up in there. This is wet. I just get it to where you can't wring water out of it, but it's wet. I slide it in here. I seal it off. And I'm fortunate enough to have, I have a chicken incubator. I have a great big chicken incubator I start my plants in. You can put it in the oven if you remember that the seeds are in there and don't turn the oven on. Put it in your oven, turn the light on. That'll hold it about 90 degrees in my oven. Most people tell me it's about the same in theirs. It's a really fast way to germinate seeds. Is put them in a paper towel, and in 24 hours, maybe 36 hours, you're gonna be able to open that up and look and see if that seed was any good. It really speeds the process up and takes the guesswork out of it.
How about taking it to a warm window?
Too much of this. It's warm in the day, cold at night.
Okay.
Yeah. Put it on top of a stereo or a VCR that's on all the time, it's hot. You want to hold it around, I set mine at 87.5 degrees. Why 87.5? Because that's setting number 5 on it, and that's what it measured out to be, and it's perfect. 85 to 90 degrees is very, very good for pumpkin germination. I think most plants, everything I've ever germinated in there, even tomatoes, I can get tomatoes to come out of the ground in about 9 days from a dry seed, which is pretty good for a tomato. But these pumpkin seeds, 24 to 36, maybe 48 hours, you'll have that. And you'll know right now that that seed is ready to go, and you can prepare your soil, and I'm gonna give you a quick 2-second tip on that. I just poke a hole in the soil, I slip it down in there, I cover it up, then I put the whole thing in the incubator until I get 2 leaves up. This plant was, see, I put it in on the 2nd, and it was 2 days. So on the 4th, it was out with 2 leaves, and I had it back in the incubator, and then I forgot about it. I took it out and moved it, and I tried to kill it, and then that's not a good example, but it's got really cool roots. You guys can pass that around. It hasn't grown a root in probably a week, but you can pass that around and look at the root, what's going on. There's not much going on top, but the plant's going haywire. I've measured the root growth at 1/4 inch an hour on these plants. So, and that's very, very measurable and repeatable every time. Those roots grow like crazy on those things. So, when you're starting your plant, I like them in a pot just like this. Pick your poison. This is a gallon, or just under a gallon. I like a little bit bigger. You look at the size of the roots on that, there's hardly any plant. If I'd have taken care of that, this whole thing would be full of white roots in 2 weeks if that's been. So I like to start them in a pot about this big. Put your soil in there, but before you do it, this is the soil I use. I'm not endorsed by them, not sponsored by them, but I get asked all the time. This is what I use to start. Not saying that it's any better than anybody else's, but it works.
Black gold.
Black gold,
Yeah.
yep, that's what I use. It's not potting soil, it's just regular old, it's not a starter soil. This is just regular old potting soil. There's a difference with it. So, but a little tip on that, when you prepare your soil in there, particularly if the bag's been open for a while, put it in a bucket, add the water to it, stir it all up by hand, and really work that water into that soil before you put it in here. Because if you put the soil in here, and it feels pretty good, but I'm gonna top water it, you're gonna have dry spots all over in this thing. I can show you on this plant when we're done today. We can pour an inch of water on top of that thing. And one side will get completely wet, and the other side will be completely dry. You can watch it go through. So mix your water in your soil, get it just how you want it before you put it in your starter pot. It's gonna feel pretty good coming out of the bag, but once the bag's been open for a while, it's gonna dry out or whatever. So mix it up prior to putting it in here. You'll have a lot better roots when it comes time to transplant.
Drainage holes in the bottom or not?
Yes. I don't water them. I don't have to generally because I put a big plastic bag over the top of it, so it's like a terrarium. So I don't ever have to water it again. And I get the soil just right, and I don't ever have to mess with it. But yes, a couple holes in the bottom would be good. This one doesn't have them, but I hardly ever get any because I've really refined how I'm gonna make this happen, but that's really good. So you don't want them wet, you'll get dampening off problems if they're too wet. That's really an issue. So, but getting that soil the right moisture content and pack it in there pretty good. Don't you think, oh, I gotta leave that nice and loose. Well, you gotta push that down in there pretty good because those roots have gotta push those leaves out the top. And if they don't have anything to push against, those leaves aren't gonna come out the top. It's gonna get, crusted over, which in potting soil it won't, but you won't have anything for those roots to push against, and then the plant will tend to get a little leggier that way. So push that soil in there fairly firm. Those roots, they'll find their way. They'll make their own room. Don't hammer it in, but make it a lot firmer than what you might think. So, but a good sized pot is a good place to start. Okay, let's have the next one. All right. Pumpkins and I have a lot of things in common. One of them is neither one of us ever going to win a beauty contest. These are not pretty pumpkins. The other thing is we both like heat. Pumpkins do not like cold, period. They don't like cold at all. They will tolerate 0 frost. If you get any kind of frost, you're done. They will not take it. They don't like cold. They like it about 60 degrees at night and about 85 in the day is ideal. What I do is, it was 21 degrees a day that I took this picture. On May 22nd, we had 2 more frosts, but not that anybody's paying attention. On the 7th and 13th of June last year, we both have the same temperature of 21 and 27 degrees in June last year, but who remembers that? I put them in a little plastic greenhouse hut right here. And I've got a whole bunch of blankets. I get them at yard sales or whatever for free, pretty much, and throw over them. Okay, throw the next slide up there, if you would, please. Inside of there, I use heat lamps. That's inside that little hut. And I just put heat lamps in there at night and uncover them during the day because it's pretty easy to bake them. And you want them to get lots of light, but it's a little bit of a process. You may not have the temperature fluctuations that I have. That may not be a real big problem for you. But don't get them too hot, don't get them too cold, and they'll be very, very happy. They'll grow very rapidly. So see the yellowing on that plant over there? It was too cold at night for it, and I had 2 100-watt heat lamps in there with it covered up, and it was still cold, and that's what causes that yellowing. Same with that one that's going around here. It was sitting in the shop, and it was like 58 degrees in there. So, okay, next slide. Okay, water, 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 water. I put down, my soil drains very, very, very well. I've got good soil, and I'm putting down 300 gallons a day per plant per day. They take a lot of water. Your soil may not take that. You're just telling me that you've got a lot of clay. You might take 20 gallons of water a day. The plant's gonna convert a lot of that water to pumpkin weight. The pumpkin will grow at its peak, and we'll see some pictures coming up real soon, 30 to 50 pounds a day that pumpkin's gonna add. So you've gotta have a lot of water and a lot of nutrients available. When that thing hits a stride, you gotta be ready to go and ready to feed it and water it. So this is the watering system that I use. These are 2 feet on center. It's 1-inch cheap sprinkler line is all it is, just plastic PVC. I've got 2 holes drilled, one on each side at about a 45-degree angle, every 12 inches, all the way down. Each of those, they're 26 feet long, is what each of those runs is. 2 holes in each one, valves on all of them, and that's how I water. I don't like to get the leaves wet at all, because anytime you've got a squash plant or any broadleaf plant, powdery mildew is an issue. I don't know if you have that problem over here. We do, because our nights are so cold, they tend to get damp and you grow powdery mildew like crazy. So by never getting the leaves wet or only watering in the morning, it really helps with that. So that's how I do it. I just walk down, I've got a little device I made, and I just walk down and turn the valves on. I water this way every other day, pretty consistently. I've had to do overhead watering the last couple of years because it's just been so hot. So this system works really well. I stole it from Ron Hoffman down in Riverton. He is the one that came up with this idea. It's so simple. It's not rocket science. It's a piece of pipe with a hole drilled in it. But it's better than drip line because you can purge it. Drip line tends to get calcium in it, and it plugs up and gets sand in it and algae. These things, nothing's glued together. It's just friction stuck together, and it's all low pressure. Out of those holes, it kind of dribbles out about 10 inches out on each side. It's kind of cool to look at. Birds love it. But just dribbles out of both sides of that. And if you start to get it plugged up, you can either go through and poke the holes out real simple, or just turn all but a couple of the pipes off, and it'll get enough pressure to clear all those holes out, and you don't have the problems of dry spots in the patch that way. Real simple, works. I use it on a lot of other things too, in my greenhouses or in my hoop houses. I use it in the raised beds. Same exact things. They work really well. It's cheap. I really like that part too. So
is it better than like a soaker hose?
way better. Way better.
I have soaker hoses and they just keep.
Constantly flat. Yeah, this is a 3/32 hole is what I drilled in them. For me, that's what works ideal. I can run with a 1.5-horse pump off my ditch pump with a 1-inch line feeding it. I can run 6 of those pipes at a time exactly where I want them. If I turn any more on, I don't quite get the coverage that I'd like, but I run 6 of those at a time, and it makes it real easy to set them up in zones to water really, really quickly. So, and hopefully automate here soon.
So you're just turning on the valves as your plant grows out farther and farther?
Yeah, I water the whole thing before. I want to wake the soil up before the plant gets to it.
Okay.
The roots are growing at 1/4 inch an hour, and you'll find roots where that little overhead sprinkler is up there, probably getting really close to where that plant is already. You'll already start to find roots out 6-8 feet from the plant. So the roots are going like crazy under this. So. All right, next up. All right, so this plant, this is actually 2. I always plant 2 of them side by each.
How far apart? Foot?
Those are 4 feet apart.
Oh, foot.
Yeah. I do that because it gives me a choice. If one plant's a little better, maybe something happened, maybe I screwed up and cut it or stepped on it, or who knows. It gives you a backup plan. And I like to grow the same genetics right on the same one another. If I grow 2 different genetics next to each other, now which one do I get rid of? Because one of them's got to go. And it makes it a lot easier if you just go, oh, that's the better plant, and you just get rid of one. So it's kind of hard to cut them off sometimes. It's like getting rid of your favorite child or your least favorite child. So this was right before I cut them off. The pipes are 2 feet apart, so you can see it's at around 6 feet. The vine is already. And now I'm going to start to manage the vine. This is a really, really important when it comes to growing giant pumpkins. Everywhere that there's a leaf on a pumpkin plant, God had a plan. He put a great big leaf on this thing, and a great big stem, and where the vine is down here, put a root right here. So this great big umbrella catches all the water, runs right down your elbow, and drips off onto that root. Every single place that there's a leaf, there's potentially another root. That's what makes the Atlantic giant what it is capable of doing. Because of the root structure that it has, it takes a lot of plant and a lot of root if you're gonna add 50 pounds of pumpkin in a single day, 2 pounds an hour. It takes a lot of plant and a lot of root to do that. So, this was right before I cut it off. I was standing there, I'd already made the decision. You see, I can see it, but this plant right here, you can see it's kind of buried right there. This one's just laying on top. I'd already made my decision what I was gonna do, but I took a picture right before I cut it off. Once the plant gets laid down, back up a little bit. When you plant, I forgot this on transplant, this is important. When you plant your plant in the ground, they're kind of like your hair. It kind of has a way it wants to go. A pumpkin plant will come up with the cotyledons, the two first little shovel leaves that'll come up, and then there'll be the first true leaf that'll come up, and it'll be that little jagged one. If you saw, it's kind of got the little serrations around the edge. That's called the first true leaf, and it'll be between the two little shovel ones. And it's gonna go one way or the other, whichever way it is. That vine is gonna go the opposite of that first true leaf. So if that thing got two of them out here and that first true leaf's laying back like this and got the serrations around it, that vine wants to go out toward you, or just opposite, 180 degrees from that first leaf. That's the way it wants to go. If you get it wrong, the plant's gonna grow upside down and you'll have to try to flip it over at some point down the line, and it makes it really difficult. So it's kind of important to get them off to a good start. I apologize, I missed on that. So make sure that that first true leaf, it's opposite. That leaf is pointing the way it wants to go. Like it's gonna catch a ball, that's the way the vine is gonna go. It's opposite that first leaf that has the serrations. Every one of them will do it. They'll do them the exact same way.
Move that leaf to make it go the direction
You
you
just
want
plant
to?
it in that
Oh, I see what you're
orientation.
saying.
That's
Okay.
why I like to start them in a pot and then transplant rather than direct seeding them. I like to do that because if you direct seed, you can kind of guess and orient the seed and think, okay, this is the way I think it's gonna come up. Sometimes you got a 50-50 chance that way. It's either gonna go one way or the other way. So that's why I like to start them, get them in there, get the first leaf. When they're no bigger than what that one that came around here is, their time to go outside. You don't want to keep them, they're going to get root bound, you can see. Get them outside about that time. So what we're going to do is dig a trench ahead of that vine, and it's going to hit the ground. You can kind of see what it looks like. And dig you a trench about 6 inches deep, 4 inches deep, whatever, just ahead of it, just a shovel ahead of it. Lay that vine down in it, and all the way through. I think there's, hit the next one, I think there's a better picture of it. Yep, there it is. See all these trenches right here? Those are the side vines. A pumpkin plant looks like a pumpkin plant, like a pine tree looks like a pine tree, or a human looks like a human. They're pretty predictable on what they're gonna look like and how they're gonna grow. As long as nothing weird happens to them, they'll look like a Christmas tree in this orientation like this. That's actually called a Christmas tree pattern, where if you look at it straight down, the youngest stuff will be up at the point and it'll get wider as the side vines are growing out. So you'll have a trunk line that comes down, and then at every leaf, it's gonna send off a side vine off to the side of it. So you have your main, and then these are called secondary vines. And this is where the money comes in on these things, is getting these vines in the ground and getting the roots established. Because when we pollinate this thing, it's go time, and you'll see the growth here in just a minute. So we want to bury these, and everywhere there's a leaf, and anything that's coming off of these side vines, just pick it off. Let the main leaf go, but any other vines everywhere, it's either gonna send a tendril, or it's gonna send a female, a male flower, or another vine. Every one of those leaf nodes is gonna do that. Just pick it off of there. All you need is that leaf. And get it in the ground, and then cover it up with the soil really good. Get a couple inches of soil on it is ideal. And then it will send those roots down there as it grows along. So, and make sure it's watered and ready to go.
But that's just the main vine that you're
The
doing.
main and the
then-
secondaries.
Which ones are you picking off though?
The tertiaries, the ones that come off of the secondaries. Anything that
Oh.
comes off of these, anything that's coming this way, this is the main coming out here. And then these are the secondaries coming off. Just kind of think of it as a Christmas tree. It's got branches coming off like this. Those are the secondaries. You don't want anything else coming off of there because these things are prolific and they will take over the salad. I call it growing salad. The salad will take over your world.
So it's okay to have the secondary, but
Yeah, you
anything
want
off
the secondaries, but
you want-
nothing, any other vines that are coming off the secondary, just pick them off with your thumbnail and then bury it up. And I like to bury right up to the bottom of the leaf. It'll grow. The plant's gonna get this tall. So when you bury it, it's this tall and you're right to the bottom of the leaf, that's fine. And it's not perfect. Don't feel like you gotta get every single one of them exactly right every single time. Do the best you can. Do the best you can with it. So you always gotta remember, they're just a plant. This is fun. This is fun. And it is a challenge. You gotta remember this too. You take somebody, and I'm in the same boat. I look at these world-class growers, and I look at them and go, oh man, I'll never be able to beat them. It doesn't matter. I'm not trying to beat them. I'm trying to do the best I can every single year with what I've got to work with. So don't worry about what I'm doing. Don't let me steal your joy because I'm growing 1,000 pounds every time and you're only getting 500. Don't let me steal your joy because you're doing the best you can with what you've got, and let that motivate you rather than discourage you. So don't let other people have the fun part without you getting to enjoy what you're doing too. And it is just a plant, and it's not a salvation issue. We're not gonna have to explain why we didn't do our pumpkin right when we get there. So we may have to explain our reaction to why we didn't do it right, but not what we didn't do right. So, okay, we've got on kind of the secondaries, the burying them. This is really an important step if you want to get past that 500-pound mark. You probably don't have to do a whole bunch of this. If 500 pounds or less is kind of where you want to be, you can probably grow 500 pounds without doing a whole lot of vine burying or anything. But if you want to do this, play with it. You're not going to get it right the first year, maybe not the second year. I'm 10 years in, and I get it mostly right usually. So break a few here and there. Do them during the heat of the day. Do this vine work during the heat of the day because they do get brittle when they're cold. Next up. All right, this is the big day. This is pollination day. So we've got male flowers, we've got female flowers. For pollination to happen, they have to meet. And if you don't care about the genetics, the bees will do it. They will do it for you. I care about the genetics because I want to be able to give you a seed that says, I know who mom was and I know who dad was, and I know this is a good seed. They won't cross with about anything else. There are a couple things I understand that they will kind of cross with. You can't cross them with a zucchini. You can't cross them with a cucumber. Even though they're in the same family, you can't cross them with the hardware store, field, cucurbita people. It's not going to cross with that. It's not going to happen. It will pollinate, or the bees will pollinate if you don't want to do it. But these are the male flowers with the yellow blossoms peeled off. These are the suitors, and this is the princess. So basically what we want to do is take the male flower, pick them, the fresh ones that just bloomed in the morning. This is before the bees get out in the morning. You only got to do this once or twice. Go out in the morning. The male flowers look like a tulip. They're long and skinny, and that's all that's in the middle of them. It's just that stamen in the middle of them. And that's where the pollen is on that male. And I just peel all the yellow blossom off of it, and I take it to the female down in the stigma and introduce that pollen all around her. And I use 3 or 4 of the males to get as much pollen as I can possibly get on there. And the female, see those little nubbins in there? Those are called lobes, and that's going to dictate later on how many lobes it has. But anyway, just get the pollen all the way around all that. It's kind of a cool thing to do. You get to play God for just a little bit. It's kind of cool. So, okay, next slide. Once I'm done pollinating, because I want to make sure of the genetics, you don't have to do this step. The bees will do it. But if you want to ensure the genetics are clean, you need to do it this way. And then I take a Dixie cup, and I put a rubber band around the petals, and I tie her off, I slip a Dixie cup over it, and then I put one of these frozen water, I take a water bottle and I sit next to her and cover it up with a foam cooler so nobody else is getting in there. I'm not gonna get a bee in there, I'm not gonna get an ant to go on. I know who mom is and I know who dad is. So she's only viable for about 12 hours, so if it all falls apart the next day or whatever, it's not a big deal. I don't know if you can see it on that where you're sitting, but there's a little bitty pumpkin right there. And it's about the size of your thumb. And that's the female. The female flowers have a little baby pumpkin under them, great big flower, and flowers will be that big. Have a little baby pumpkin under it, and they'll be real short and low to the ground. And the males will be tall and slender. Okay? And they smell amazing. You know when you walk by a lilac bush, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's good. That's the way them things smell. Oh, they're amazing. So, okay, fruit positioning.
Before you get to there, how many of the females are you pollinating so that, in case of hail or whatever, how many are you starting?
I pollinate 3.
Okay.
2 or 3. On the main vine, that's the only place you want to pollinate unless you've had a major failure or wreck or something with the main, then you got to go to a secondary, it'll make a new main. 2 or 3 times on each plant, you'll want to pollinate a pumpkin. And they'll grow usually about 2 feet apart. You'll usually get a female and then maybe 1 or 2 vines, then you get another female and 1 or 2 vines. Sometimes you'll get one in each vine for just a little bit. That's a really good question because sometimes the very first one isn't the best one. It's the one you want to keep because let's go. But sometimes the first one isn't the best one. Maybe it's, not on the best place on the vine. Maybe it's not far enough out. I like them to be 10 feet minimum from the stump to the female pumpkin. And you want to bury that vine all the way up until you get that first female, but back off about 2 feet so you got some slack in that vine, because that pumpkin can get this big, and the stem's got to rise up, and that vine's got to be able to follow with it. So you got to leave some slack in there, and that's what you can kind of see in that middle picture right there. See that vine just laying on the ground? It's kind of like if you took a garden hose and put an S on the ground so you got some slack in it. That's what I've done with that. It just kind of comes and you want to, is your vine, say your pumpkin's right here, this is your pumpkin, your vine's coming by, say it's coming, our stump's over here, the pumpkin's here, bring the vine by it so it's on the outside of that curve as you bring the vine by, because you're going to need that slack and get that vine out of the way. We're not talking about a pumpkin this big, we're talking about a pumpkin this big. And when that vine comes by, you can't just pick it up and move it, or once it gets a little size to it, you've got to kind of set that thing up for success. You get that vine to get to the pumpkin and then get away from that pumpkin, so it's kind of on the outside of that curve where that pumpkin's sitting. You kind of following what I'm saying? Okay, because this is kind of important. I lost a 1,600-pound pumpkin 2 years ago because I didn't do this properly. So, about 6 days, that's about softball size from pollination. These are 1 week apart, each of these photos that we're going to see. They start out kind of slow, but that's probably, that one there is probably its 10-day picture, I'm guessing. I don't have it in front of me. That's a water bottle just like this one. That's a 20 ounce, this is a 16. So that's at 10 days, it's about the size of a bowling ball in 10 days. In 17 days, it's about that big. So they really, really grow. So you've got to get that vine and get it clear away from that pumpkin as much as you can. And if you got to sacrifice some leaves or pull a couple roots or whatever, make sure that you get that vine plenty of room back there, or even wait till the next pumpkin. If you just go, man, I don't have enough vine back here. It's hard, but grow the next one. Don't grow that one. Wait another week till the next female shows up. Pollinate her. You will be so happy on the other end. There's plenty of time. If you can get them pollinated by the 4th of July, there's more than enough time to grow a great big pumpkin. So probably 17 days. The next one, Rich. And this is showtime here. We're at 24 days. That's puberty for a pumpkin. About the first 25 days or so, a pumpkin goes through, this is just what I've read, I'm not a scientist, but I've read this, that a pumpkin goes through what's called cell division. And all it's doing is making all the cells within that pumpkin that it's gonna get. It's done. It's not gonna get any more after basically 25 days. Then it goes into what's called cellular expansion. It's just gonna fill them up. And that's when it starts really adding the weight. It's adding, this is a 1 pound bottle of water. It adds this every hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, minimum. So they grow really, really fast. Sometimes over 2 pounds an hour they'll grow. I've had pumpkins measured by taping them, by measuring them, over 50 pounds a day. So they really start to go. When they go, that's where it's fun. That's the fun part. So that's why we've got to have the roots back there to feed this thing. We've got to have lots of leaves for photosynthesis to feed the roots, to take the nutrients up, to get to the pumpkin. Because it's transporting 1 pound an hour to that plant, or to that pumpkin. So next up. August is very typical. You'll double the size of the fruit, whatever it is, the 1st of August. If you're at 500 pounds at the beginning of August, you'll easily make it to 1,000 by the end of August. It'll generally, it doubles its size really close. I measure mine way too much because I live and work in the same place. So I go out every day because I'm a nerd. This is what nerds do when they grow gardens. All of my pumpkins, this whole book is just full of them. These are all daily measurements. Starting at day 10, and I measure the circumference, the side to side, and the end-to-end measurements, and I'll go over all that with you. But I'll get those measurements every single day, and then I can estimate, just by what its mass is, I can estimate what its daily growth is, what the total weight of the pumpkin is, and you know, from here it starts out 10, 14, 15, 17, and then at day 25, the last growth was 18, 17, now we go 24, 15, 17, 30, 30, 35, 36, 54. It's showtime all the way through August. They just go like crazy. And it's only estimates, but it's really close. I do that with each of my pumpkins almost every day because, like I say, when nerds grow gardens, that's what happens.
How many pumpkins do you grow?
I grow 3. I'm going to drop to 2. I'm building a greenhouse as we speak, or as soon as the snow is off of it. And I want to get down to 2, because 3 pumpkins is a lot. 1 is good, 2 is a lot, 3 is for people that don't have a life. And 4 is for people that are retired that can go do this all day, every day. So they do take, I say it takes 15 minutes per plant per day of maintenance. That's the kind of time it takes. And you'll get your returns in the form of weight that is relation or correlates to what the time you put into them. Burying the vines, fertilizing, watering, taking care of the plant, talking to them, cussing at them, whatever it is, that's what you're going to get out. You're going to get out of them what you put into them. If you go out, throw them in the ground, water them, walk away, you're going to get a big pumpkin, but it's not going to be anything crazy. But if you put the time into it, they will put 100% effort into their growth 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if they don't realize their potential, I'll give you 3 guesses who to blame. The first 2 don't count. So, but you can do a selfie and get the picture of that. So who it is to blame. So this pumpkin here ended up weighing 1,165 pounds. This one ended up. I took that to Utah, kind of I got it from the seed from a guy down there who was 87 years old and grew a state record in Utah. And he gave me a seed, and I told him, well, I'm going to grow one for you next year, and I'll bring it back. And he didn't make it to see it. So it was really, I got down there and found out he was gone. So just a few weeks before. It was really unfortunate. I was the only one that grew one of his seeds and took it to the way out. So, okay, next up. Okay, so that was the big day. So that's the same pumpkin. When it got fully matured, it was 82 days from pollination. The DAP is days after pollination. A day in a pumpkin's life is about like a year in a human's life. They age the plants give up. You can see in the background, that plant was 30 feet wide and 26 feet long. So it was a big plant. It's the same plant that we've been seeing all along. 82 days old, cut it off and took it to Utah where I got the seed from, took it back there. So I name all mine. Technically, all pumpkins are females because they are the pregnant belly, they are the ovum of the plant. So I consider them to be all females, so they all get females' names. I grew 3 last year. They were the golden girls, Rose, Sophia, and Blanche. My wife's name is Dorothy. She gets to stay in the house with me, so. So that worked out really well. There's a lot more of these slides and pictures and stuff on the Jay's Giants every year. It's about what you're seeing here, but there's a description under each of those. It's more of a diary for me, so I can look back at it because I can't remember anything anymore. So I can look back year to year too. But it's kind of interesting if you're into this kind of thing. So, okay, next up.
So does that huge pumpkin need that whole great big plant that was behind it to feed it?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No wonder
So-
my pumpkins aren't doing good, 'cause they keep cutting off.
Well,
I did that.
there's a point, and I stop them. They would grow as big as this room easy, but I stop them when they get to where I can't bury the vines anymore. I cut them off, because if there's not a root under that leaf, I don't want it on the plant. If that,
You did cut the ends off then.
I do, I terminate them, yeah, because if I can keep burying vines and keep getting roots, I'm gonna let them keep going. But there comes a point when I'm out of room, so I cut them off.
Yeah.
Those on the slide before you had something underneath the pumpkin?
Yes. Tincture poison, that's another of the questions get all the time. You grow them on a pallet? No. I have a lifting sling, I brought it with me, you can see it here. That's actually a trampoline mat, the part you jump on. And I'm sure over here in Gillette, there's a lot of those laying around from trampolines that went flying. You can probably get them for nothing like I do. Keep the big center round thing. I cut them in half and then fold them over so I got like a quarter of that. And I slip that underneath and they work really, really well to grow the pumpkin on. It keeps them away, keeps the mice from coming up from the bottom, because everything likes to eat pumpkins. It keeps the mice from coming in. I put a little sand on top of it, just lift the pumpkin up when it's little, put a little sand under it, and then set it down. I just spread sand in front of it so it can slide across that. Works really, really well. Back east they use mill fabric because they have all the mills and everything around. We don't, but we have a plethora of trampoline jump mats around from the wind. So it's about the same stuff that works really, really well, and it's cheap or free. So this is a lifting sling. This is how we lift them. It's basically a heavy-duty basketball hoop with 8 seat belts around it. That purple rope goes around the bottom of the concave part of the pumpkin, and you just cinch it up underneath it. And then it's like a ball in a sock when you pick it up. You pick this up with the tractor. This one's rated, I think, at 2,500 pounds. I hope to bend it someday. So that's how we pick them up. Another way to pick them up is get like a comforter and about 3 or 4 guys or gals and lay it right next to it and roll it over on it and then just pick it up like a fireman's blanket. That's a really good way to carry them. Don't try to pick them up with forks, you're going to damage them. So the skin on the pumpkins, particularly when they're young, boy, I mean, I'll wear gloves, like latex gloves when I'm out messing with them because my fingernails will scratch them. And a little scratch when the pumpkin's this big will be a gouge that long when it gets full size, so, because it stretches with it. So that's how we pick them up.
Next.
Yeah, next one. And just loading day. That one there, that was the one I called Blanche. The one in the back of the truck was Sophia, the one that we kept seeing the pictures of. That was Sophia. And then Rose ended up on the back.
So is there any way to, like, work with them when they're smaller so that they'll grow up and not have like a flat side?
No, like I said, these pumpkins and I have a few things in common. They're not about beauty, it's about weight. They're like a waterbed bladder, if you're old enough to remember the water beds. Take the frame off a waterbed, that's kind of what they are. You'll want, once you get them oriented on that vine, you'll want to keep a cloth over it all summer long, a sheet or something so the sun never touches the skin of the pumpkin.
Really?
Yeah. The reason is when that's adding 30, 40, 50 pounds a day, just like our skin or any vegetable, it'll ripen, the sun will ripen the skin, and that thing is expanding really fast. And if that skin is not somewhat pliable and young still, it will split, and then you're done.
So at what point do you cover them?
Day one.
Oh, okay.
Matter of
so
fact, I
it's-
cover mine, I don't know if you remember, there was a chair sitting above the end of the vine.
Oh, yeah.
Mine has never seen the sun other than when they were getting their pictures taken, or at the very tail end during the day, I was trying to warm them up a little bit because we were having so much frost on September 7th, but who remembers that, right? So. Okay. I had 89 days between frost last year was all we had. Okay, next one. That was Sophia down in Utah. I take a pumpkin to Utah, to Colorado, and then we host, my shop and myself, which is Wild Giants or Jay's Giants. It's the same thing, they just have two different names. We host the Wyoming State Championship Way Off. We are a GPC sanctioned event. There's only about 120 events worldwide, and we happen to be one of them. There is one in Rapid City. And with that, I'm gonna do a little plug and commercial here. I give away all my seeds. I give away all the information. I'll talk with you on the phone. I'll help you with soil tests. I'll do whatever. I do it all for free. I don't want anything for it other than if I give you a seed, bring whatever it grows to the Way Off. Support the Way Off and help get others pay it forward.
Even if it only weighs 50 pounds?
The first, well, funny you said that. The first Way Off I attended, I brought my pumpkin, and that's part of the beginning of me. The first pumpkin that I brought to a Way Off weighed 55 pounds, and I brought it in the back of my Volkswagen. And I had a friend there in town, his name's Steve Tharp. He's a local veterinarian. Some of you may have actually heard of him over here. He's a character. And I don't know how, but sometimes the stars line up, grew a 512-pound pumpkin that year. He doesn't know how he did it. Dumb luck. But he grew a 512-pound pumpkin. And I took my little pumpkin and I sat on top of it. And I sat there, and I'm not gonna lie, I had a little pumpkin envy. I looked at that for a little while, and I walked up to him and I said, Steve, game on, brother. You've never beat me since. So yes, even if it's 50 pounds, come to the Way Off. Even if you go to the one in Rock Spring, or in Rapid City, I know it's a little closer. But bring it to the Way Off. Come and talk to the other growers. We usually have around 20 or so show up every year. We even do a giant zucchini contest. So if you grow a zucchini that long, bring it. You can win money. We have significant cash prizes. We pay down 10 places even. So
it helped pay our water bill.
oh yeah, well, you know, if you win, it'll be about $1,000 to win. So
When is this?
first Saturday of October every year in Warland. And we do a pumpkin drop that day too. And if you go on YouTube and just look up Wyoming Giant Pumpkin Drop, you'll see some of my antics there. I have a friend that owns Swing Trucking that has a 170-foot crane, how conveniently, and donates the use of his crane that day. And go ahead and hit the next slide.
Wyoming Giant Pumpkin Drop?
Yes. That's a piano getting a 1,150-pound pumpkin dropped on it.
Whose piano?
It was a friend of mine, and we were met with a little bit of dissension amongst people for destroying a piano, but I'll assure you it was checked out and it was no good. Really no good now. But I'm going to tell you, we were lied to. Remember when Bugs Bunny drops a piano or Wile E. Coyote drops a piano and the sound it makes? That's not the sound it makes. It just makes a big whop sound. So, anyway, that was a piano. That was an awesome picture. I loved it. So, anyway, next one.
How long does a test take?
Soil
By the time you
test.
mail it and you get the result, how long does it take?
If I send mine on Monday and I send it to where they get it Wednesday, normally by Friday morning I've got the result. If the mail does their thing, it'll be the following Monday.
Okay.
When they get it, it's usually within 24 hours, you'll have the email from them from whenever they get it. They're fast.
Do you eat the pumpkin eventually? or
They
what?
are edible. There's nothing in them that makes them non-edible. They are absolutely okay to eat. They taste like a cantaloupe you would go buy at the store today. They look like a cantaloupe, kind of smells like it, doesn't really taste like anything. That's what they taste like, more like a cantaloupe than they do a pumpkin. Very, very little flavor. I've had people bring me cakes that have been made out of them. They picked up chunks of them and taken them home and made things and brought them to them, which is really cool. I love that when they do that. I've had people take, this is one of the carvings. This is the same pumpkin again, Sophia, that I took to Utah. This was her after she got her Halloween costume on. People will take home pieces of that and cook with it and sometimes make stuff and bring it to me or whatever. It's pretty cool. But very flavorless, but absolutely edible. These seeds aren't, they're not magic. I didn't get them from the store that Jack got his beans from for his beanstalk. There's no magic seed, there's no magic fertilizer. Do a little Mythbusters here. They're not magic seeds. We don't use milk. Everybody says, oh, do you feed them milk? Let me fix this for you. No. Milk, the myth behind the milk is the calcium content in the milk, and if you have unpasteurized whole milk and you spray it diluted with the right concentration on the leaves, it can help with powdery mildew. But other than that, milk has no use at all. So that's always a $1 million thing. Do you feed them milk? Do you feed them steroids? No. Do you feed them milk, Miracle Grow? No. I feed them what Western Laboratories tells me to, and you'd be shocked. I'll tell you what some of it is here in just a minute when we get through this. So that's some of the myth busters of pumpkins. This is Sophia with her Halloween costume on. That was a 1,000-pound spider. We have a carver in Worland. His name is Ryan Green. He volunteers his time. I donate the pumpkin. Blair's Grocery donates the use of their store for us. And Ryan comes in and it takes him about 18 hours to carve one of these things. I don't know what, I think the eyeballs are 2 little pumpkins or a pumpkin cut in half. I think the little dots above it are beets. And I can't even pronounce what the vegetable was that he made the fangs out of, but the rest of it is all Sophia. Just carved down. It takes it into detail. On Jay's Giants, if you go back a year, you can go fast if you want, go back year to year to year. You can look at some of his work. It's absolutely world-class carving. There are people that make a living doing what he's doing for free. Probably a $5,000 pumpkin sitting there like that, all carved up. And we donate it all to our community just because it's cool and we want to. So, okay, next slide. All right, that's my little nephew, great nephew over there. He was Spider-Man, so I thought that was pretty cool. So we had to go to the store and get a picture with him. This kid right here is about 6 foot tall. That's how we get the seeds out of it. You just send a kid in to go get it. Cut a hole in the side, you send a kid in, he climbs all the way in. Lots of kids go in them in the fall. So, okay, next one. There should be a little video right there. I think you might have to click that, maybe hit Control-C, maybe we'll get it to go and play that, or it might just play for you. My son, I give him a birthday present every year, and I keep a pumpkin back for him. He gets about 15 of his buddies out there, and takes his AR out, and this is just information that I'm just saying, that if you ever needed to know, I don't know why you never need to know it, but the ratio of tannerite to wet fleshy material is about 5 pounds of tannerite for 100 pounds of wet fleshy material.
Control what?
C, I think. That should be it.
I was thinking that red.
Maybe? Yeah, that should bring the link up, so, hopefully. No? Do it. Can you just click on it while I get the play?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. Yep, it's coming. So my son, he takes his buddies out. They have an all-day party, and this has just kind of been a tradition for us. Hopefully we'll play. If you can't find it, it's on YouTube.
I pushed it over times.
Oh, it's got to go. There we go. Oh, you're not connected.
Oh, yeah, I'm not.
No, okay. Well, go on YouTube. You can look it up. You can do it on the phone or whatever. Anyway, 30 pounds of tannerite and a 1,000-pound pumpkin. that's enough. I'm just telling you. About the biggest piece we had left was about like that.
Oh, there it goes.
Oh, it's going? Just gotta get it on the right one.
Here, how do I get that?
We had fertilizer field.
Yep, it's fine. The carved one with Sophia on the right. We had a 55-mile-an-hour crosswind. I'm gonna give my son props. Iron sights with an AR. 100 yards is too close for 30 pounds of tannerite, in case you ever need to know. It's a little too close. Maybe 200 yards would have been about right, but this is cool. You got it in 4 shots. I thought that was pretty good for that kind of crosswind. I can just watch that over and over and over. The pumpkin drop videos are on there also. On just go Wyoming Giant Pumpkin Drop, there's a bunch of them on there. My favorite one was the one that said made in China on it. It was a big corona germ about 10 feet. I bought a 10-foot ball, and I try not to get political or anything with it, but I couldn't take it anymore, and I bought a 10-foot beach ball, took it to a body shop, had it painted white. We painted a bunch of little orange or red triangles on it, and in 3-foot tall letters, we put made in China on it. We dropped a pumpkin on it. So that's as political as I'm gonna get with it, but it was fun. So, so that's the core of it. It's a lot of information. We can spend a lot more time. I could do an entire day just on soil and soil analysis and composting. I could do a day on irrigation. We could talk about genetics for hours. My wife calls it pumpkin porn. I'll be up at 2 o'clock in the morning on my tablet. Yeah, looking at pumpkins. It could be worse. It could be worse. So gotta remember, it is a plant. It is for fun. It is a challenge. And somebody's gonna meet you. Do the best you can every year, every time. What I'm doing isn't the same as what you're doing. I'm always very careful to say, oh, you gotta add this fertilizer, you gotta do this, but you gotta do this, because your situation is different than yours. Do what you can. You might be growing in town, you might be growing out on the prairie, you might be growing in an old feedlot. It's hard to say where you're growing, what your soil is. I can't stress it enough. Do the soil test, even if it's not growing giant pumpkins. If you grow giant pumpkins, here's a little secret. The rest of your garden doesn't suck. Because you understand the growth phases and stages of plants, what they need, what causes them to grow, what the diseases look like, what deficiencies look like. You get an eyeball for it. I currently hold the Wyoming state record for a tomato right now, and it was about that big. I've grown.
Was it edible?
Absolutely. I'm not kidding. It's a big Zach. I'm going to grow again this year. Truly, look at it. It's got goosebumps. It was one of the best tasting tomatoes I've ever eaten. It was amazing. It was so sweet and big. So the rest of my pepper plants will get this tall. Every year I pick on one other plant. Might be a potato, might be jalapenos this year, might be bell peppers, might be tomatoes, whatever it is. I consistently, my tomatoes get 9 to 10 feet tall. I grow them in a hoop house. They get 9 or 10 feet tall. It's like a hedgerow all the way down the middle of this thing. I grow in the same place, in the same soil every single year. I take a scoop of soil, I seal it up, I send it off, I get the results, I add to it. I never deplete the soil. I always know what's in there. I always know what to add, and I just put it in there what it needs.
Okay, so you said your first year you only had a 50-pound pumpkin. Okay, the seeds in your 50-pound pumpkin still have the genetic material in, or because it's only a 50-pound pumpkin, it's not as good as your big pumpkin seeds?
It's the genetics, not the size of the pumpkin.
Okay.
The DNA, the genetics in the little head of this pumpkin, this seed, is what's going to determine it. I'm gonna show you, and I got a whole bunch of files here, you guys can mess with, I got plenty of seeds. And I'm gonna show you what I do. These seeds, are they edible? Yes, they're absolutely edible, but you have to eat them like a sunflower. Because this is like eating a piece of wood. They're really hard, and it's really hard for the seeds, or for the cotyledons to get out of here. So what I do, and I got plenty of seeds and plenty of nail files, you guys can all do this, I just file around the edge. You'll kind of hear it. I just file around the edge, it takes this long, not down on the point.
Did you say not on the point?
Nope, not to the point. That was the point. I just hang on to that and I file right down to it. And you can peel them off now, or you can soak them and germinate them. They'll come out of there now. They will come out on their own, but sometimes the plants will come out, the cotyledons will be deformed, they sometimes don't get off to a good start. And it takes 15 seconds to do that. I tend to peel the seed coat clear off, and then I put them in my paper towel.
Well, you don't leave it whole?
No, this is what I,
Can I see what? it
yep,
looks like?
that's what it is. You can hand that
Would
around.
all
so.
other pumpkin seeds look like that too?
But they're about
If
this
you were-
big.
But if you
Yeah,
were to take them
yeah, if
apart-
you were to do it, yeah. Actually, if you take this seed, and we'll do more of these, we'll play with this stuff, anybody wants to stick around. You crack this thing open. This is the part you would eat if it was a sunflower seed. And I'm just gonna split it in half. These are the two leaves that are gonna come up through the ground. God designed these to be like a shovel, to push their way through the soil. And then they're gonna open up. These are the first two leaves called cotyledon, dicots, or, dicots, two. And this is the leaf, and if you look at these, you'll actually see the veins of the leaf in those.
But the
Oh, wow.
pointed ends go up.
The point goes down. This is,
Oh.
yeah, that's the point, and it's gonna go down. That's where all the money is right there.
When you're putting it in your soil, you.
Yeah, put the pointy end down, yeah. And you'll see that if you germinate them in a paper towel, like I do, the root will come right out the bottom of this thing.
The root comes out first.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what'll happen first. But we'll do all of this.
That whole thing's gonna
Oops,
come up
that's
out of
okay.
the ground, right?
This, yeah.
That whole thing, right,
Yeah, the root's gonna come right out of here and it's gonna push. That's why it's kind of important to get that soil somewhat firm, so those roots can push down and shove these leaves up through the soil. They're designed to act like a little miniature shovel, and that's what they do.
Huh.
That's the way they were designed. We'll do lots of these so everybody can see it. When we're done just messing around here, we got lots of time, as much time as you've got, I'll make sure that you're getting the information, because if I'm up here just talking and you're not getting the information, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So I wanna make sure that you guys have an understanding, at least of what we're talking about here, but we can pass these around, look at it, and see that.
How
Does
many,
that look like a leaf in there? Isn't that cool?
how many seeds do you get out of one of them chunks?
Every year, how many seeds do I get out of a pumpkin? Between 100 and 600
Oh,
is typical.
just varies.
Just varies, yeah. If you eat one of these, you close your eyes, it's a pistachio. It should not be a pumpkin. That's a pistachio seed.
How long do you soak them? You said you soak them?
1 hour.
1 hour?
Yeah, unless I forget about them, and then longer. Usually an hour is plenty, because they're going in a damp cloth, in that sealed bag, in a warm environment, and in 48 hours, they're gonna be in the soil. They have everything they need, other than just a little bit of moisture to get them started. So, they're a really cool plant, and what I think is really cool about these, it really helps with the rest of your garden, is you can take this, and it happens so fast. That sounds really good, by the way. It happens so fast, and it's so big, you can see it, like that seed there, and I'll open as many as we need to. When you open those seeds up, you can actually see the veins of the leaves in the seed that's already formed. They're ready to go. It's not just a white piece in there, it's actually the leaves that are ready to go.
How deep do you plant the seed?
About an inch. Yeah, an inch below the top of the seed is about where I go. That usually is more than enough.
So if you want to grow 4 to 6 pumpkins for the grandkids, and you want them impressive, but you're really not interested in having an 1,100 pumpkin.
Why would you wanna do that?
Well, okay, so grow as many as you can in a given space, but you want, say you have 4 or 6 grandkids. Can you go ahead and grow them all on that one
You can.
plant? Okay.
You can.
But
everything's the same. If you wanna grow more than one on there, which I don't know why anybody wanna do that. If you wanna grow more than one on a plant,
Okay.
you take away from the size of that
Yeah,
pumpkin,
yeah.
it's only gonna grow so many pounds, and it's gonna distribute it among the whole bunch
Okay.
rather than one.
Well, I'm gonna really bother you even worse now. How bad would it be if I wanted to also grow dried beans within those pumpkin plants, I mean, within the vines?
I don't know.
I mean, it should, I don't think it should take away from the soil, I mean, because it's a little.
The pumpkin's gonna win.
But beans give a good enough start that it keeps some daylight.
What's gonna happen probably is the beans are gonna climb up the pumpkin and pull the leaves down and break the leaves. That's probably what's gonna happen, would be my guess. I've had, I'll tell you a little something, that, potatoes like the same food that giant pumpkins do. I had a volunteer purple Viking come up in the middle of the pumpkin patch one year and I went, we should see what happens. I have a picture someplace, it might be on Jay's Giants. It had about 3 potatoes under it. One of them was the size of an NFL football. That was a big potato. I've tried it a couple of times since, not quite as successful as that because I probably didn't do what I should have. But anyway, they like the same thing that pumpkins do. So if you can grow a giant pumpkin, if you've got the place and you want to alternate it back and forth, grow potatoes one year and a pumpkin the next, would probably have some amazing soil out there.
So the different vegetables like different
Yes.
soils, because like, so, I just have 2 gardens,
Mhm.
but I grow like all kinds of vegetables.
When you send in your soil test, you send it to Western Laboratories, they'll actually send you a chart that will show different things, that these vegetables or these fruits like these things and what to add to each, if you're not doing giant pumpkin specifics.
I noticed your garden is weed-free and grass-free. Is it with the depth of 6 inches of the new compost? Do you work it into the old soil or do you just put it out there?
In the fall, till, some people are all about no-till. In giant pumpkins, I'm about no weeds and no competition. My soil is very, very, very good. I put my soil against anybody's soil, anywhere, anytime. But it does grow weeds. Weeds like giant pumpkin soil and food grow a lot too. It's not weed-free. Probably a few hours before the picture, it probably didn't look like that. So, in some of the pictures, it doesn't necessarily reflect what it looks like all the time. I do tend to let the weeds grow ahead of it to shade the soil, because bare, dry soil is dead soil. So the weeds do tend to shade the soil. There's a lot of mycorrhizae, a lot of fungus going on in the soil. The biology of the soil is alive, even with the weeds. But when the plant gets to them, the weeds gotta go, or even before, because the roots are running ahead of the plant. So.
Okay. Do you use any particular, I know you had a big tractor there with organic soil there. Do you buy from a certain area and a certain organic soil?
I don't, but I'm very blessed. I have a friend of mine who has the horse mahal of horse stables. Horses are his life. He grows his own weed-free grass for them, and consequently, the manure I get from him, there's nothing in it. There's no weeds in it, so I'm not bringing more in. Not everybody has that luxury. I do compost it for a year first, generally though. You can plant right in it. Matter of fact, I've dumped giant pumpkins in the compost pile, literally in the horse manure, and had them grow all over out of the next year. It's not too hot for them. Don't be afraid to use a lot, particularly once the plant gets going. You can use a lot of particularly compost, because it breaks down so slow. You're only going to get about 30% of the available nitrogen the first year anyway. So
I mean, you're not putting 6 inches on all at once, so you're doing it slowly. You
in
are
the fall, I
putting
put it all on.
Oh, in the fall?
Yeah, I'll put about 6 inches of leaves and about 6 inches of compost down in the fall. Rototill it in the best I can and walk away. I add sulfur. There's a lot of different things I add consistently, but it comes down to what this says. Whatever Western Laboratory says, that's what I put down. And it's kind of surprising.
So, if you have this much compost, like, when do you do the soil sample and where do you do the soil sample?
I do the soil sample about 2 weeks before I plant. I'll send it off, the first one. I do a little bit more than most people probably would do. Remember the nerds growing gardens? I do a soil sample and tissue sampling all summer long, where I actually take a soil sample.
Underneath the compost?
Yes.
Way under?
Yeah, I get down to it. By spring, it's pretty well broke down. Historically, it's ready to go by spring. Even all that, it looks good. It's really good. The worms are just crazy in it. So it really works well, and that's a lot. I'm probably growing in, by now, 60% compost, I would guess. At least at the top 6 or 8 inches, it's mostly compost. Mostly manure, mostly leaves. So, but I'll do a soil sample a couple weeks before I plant, get my results back, do the amendments, and then right when I plant, I'll send another soil sample off. So it's just involving science, and you don't feel like you need to do this, but it's kind of interesting. It's called science, and it's called learning, and I am certainly not the sharpest hoe in the shed, I'll assure you, but I can dig a hole in the ground and put it in the mail and go, I need to add Epsom salt, borax, and magnesium. I can do that, and I put it on the scale, I take it out and I sprinkle it on it or water it in. That's all there is to it, but I do a soil sample, and then I do a tissue sample, I mail it in, and it's the stem of right underneath one of the leaves. I'll cut the leaf off, cut it off at the vine, and it's just the stem. Cut that up, put it in this bag right here, and I put the soil sample in here, and I mail it to them, and they tell me, and that's where these numbers come from, they tell me what was in the soil, I knew what it was, I knew what was in it last time, I know exactly what I added to it, and I knew what was in the plant last time, so I added to it based on their recommendations. Cut another sample off, I mail it to them, they tell me what's in the soil now, they tell me what's in the plant now, and tell me what I should add to it. So I was able to add 400 plus pounds to my best by doing that. So it did make a difference.
When they send you these results, do they tell you you need to use Epsom salts and borax?
Yeah, here's the actual, I have no secrets.
Because I've heard like Epsom salts
Yeah.
for
This-
tomato plants.
Yeah, this is exactly what was there, and then on the back side of this, there'll be recommendations right here. These are the recommendations, so.
Okay, but that's like great.
It looks like it until you start reading it. If you were looking at one line, this is 1 week. It's really not that hard.
So it's telling you what to add each week?
Each week, yep.
What is this like?
So this is what was in the plant, the amount of phosphorus, right here. This is what the specification is, this is what mine was. Okay, and then in the soil, the phosphorus, this is the spec, and this is what was in it. So sometimes you'll find out that you got a ton of it in the soil, but the plant isn't taking it out, so you gotta figure out why that is.
What do you do with all of your leftover stems and leaves after you
What do I do with all the leftovers? The stems, the leaves, the pumpkins? Burn them. I don't want anything left. I don't want any disease. I don't want anything left from last year to next year. I'm starting over. I don't compost it. I have dumped a couple of the pumpkins in there just because it got left out. I just didn't, but I burn it all. Or we blow it up, get rid of the pumpkins, we blow them up, drop them, whatever. But all of the leaves, the stems, and there'll be 1,000 pounds of plant probably when it's all said and done. I burn it all. I get rid of it. I don't want, if there was a powdery mildew or if there was aphids hiding in there or whatever, I don't care because I'm gonna add my compost back to it. I'm gonna add my soil amendments back to it every year. I don't need that, and it's not worth perpetuating maybe a problem or having a long-term problem that I can't get rid of.
So speaking of disease or insects, what do you need to watch for?
Okay, powdery mildew, what diseases or insects? I've been lucky, for whatever reason. My plants, the genetics that I've had, tend to be the aphids don't like them. Powdery mildew, I don't know why. I'm not arguing, but I can't explain it. I haven't had to deal with it much. On some other plants, my zucchinis and stuff that are 30 feet from them, I've had troubles. But for whatever reason, I think it has to do with the way I'm watering on the ground rather than overhead. I think that's why I'm not having powdery mildew. Grasshoppers, for whatever reason, aren't even. Some people have troubles with them, or they'll have grasshoppers sitting on them, the birds will land on the leaf, poke a hole in the leaf, eat the grasshoppers. I haven't had that problem, so I'm not a great resource on a lot of the diseases and funguses and things that happen, because I have been very, very lucky. But part of it, I think, has to do with, I do almost all of my fertilizing, I foliar feed it. I have a 2-gallon pump sprayer, and I mix it up. I use soluble everything. I buy a lot of my amendments. This is what Western Laboratories says. They don't sponsor these guys. That's just what I found at eBay or Amazon or something. But I buy everything either that is water soluble already, or I'll put it in my rock tumbler, put some ball bearings in there, and bang it around in there until it's just a powder. And then I'll mix it in this 2-gallon sprayer. I pump it up and I spray it on the leaves. And it's sulfate of everything for me. Copper sulfate, manganese sulfate, magnesium sulfate, sulfate of everything. I use a lot of sulfur because our pH is so high. And I'm doing everything I can to drive that pH down. And so everything is sulfur, 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 and copper. And I think by spraying that on the leaves every other day, I think that's why I don't ever really have any disease problems, is because it's a real hostile environment for bugs and things. They just don't live on those leaves. So I think that's why I don't have a problem with it. I really don't have a problem anywhere with stuff.
So what does powdery mildew look like?
It's a white coating that gets on broadleaf plants. You'll see them on everything from lilac bushes in the fall. The leaves turn white, or even like the morning glory, the bindweed on the ground, it'll turn white, or cucumbers or cantaloupe, they'll get that white coating on them. Yeah, well, it looks like calcium on them. So I do overhead water. You did see that, and I say that. I do overhead water during the day, but I only do it in the morning until about 2 o'clock. Try to cool the plant down a little bit and keep it growing, because at about 90, 92 degrees, photosynthesis shuts off on a plant, not just pumpkins. The plant goes into conservation mode, and anything much over 90 degrees, it just closes up, and it's just sitting there. It's not really doing anything. A pumpkin plant will take in nutrients through those big leaves too. That's why I foliar spray them, and they'll absorb through the leaves as well. So I do overhead water a little bit during the heat of the day to cool that plant down. And I just got a little infrared temperature gun. I'll go out, and if it's 94 degrees, I'll turn the sprinkler on for a little bit, and you get a real feel for it. You just know that, well, it's 2 o'clock, better turn the sprinkler on for a few minutes or whatever. And mine will be all automated. Once I get my greenhouse built this year, it'll all be automated eventually here. But I'm fortunate I work 50 feet from the pumpkin patch, so it's pretty easy.
So all this concept of the runners and the
Uh-huh.
drains and the burying them in the ditch and stuff, would that hold true to like just jack-o'-lantern also?
They-
That's not the same.
Question, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, well, burying the vines, they send down a root at every leaf node. Do all other plants do that? Say a jack-o'-lantern, a cucumber, or a watermelon or something? No. Occasionally they will. You'll see one periodically, but it's not normal for them to do it. So burying the vines on any other thing, not nearly as important as it is
Oh,
the
'cause I thought
Atlantic
maybe
giant.
all those little curlicues they get.
Yeah, the
that wrap
tendrils.
around everything. I
Yeah.
thought maybe I'm doing this wrong, maybe that's part of a root that's supposed to be
No,
going
that's a
around.
tendril, and you know, these plants will grow, when they start through the, mid part of May, when that thing really starts to go, that plant will grow 8 to 10 inches, 12 inches a day. I've actually sat and watched the tendril, the little grabber things, uncurl one day. So they really grow fast. You can actually watch this stuff happen. That's kind of what makes some of this cool, is you can see it, you can touch it. At the end of the year, you take the vine and you can hold it up and look through the vine and see the capillaries, just like you're looking through a whole bunch of straws. in the vine, because, you know, the vines will get that big. So you can hold them up to the light, that little section, you can see the capillaries in the vine. So it's kind of cool that if you're a nerd and you get into this kind of stuff, it does help you understand what's going on with the plant. And again, the plant is just a vehicle. The pumpkin is nothing more than a function of what we can transport out of the soil through the plant into the pumpkin, or the jalapeno, or the radish, or whatever. It's all just the vehicle the plant is. So, what else can we?
When do you plant your
Planting day for me, ideally, is April 6th. In a perfect world, because that gives me my 78 days to the summer solstice that I desperately need. I like to pollinate, or my goal is to pollinate the pumpkin on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. Do I do that? I have done it.
Well, when did your plant actually go in the ground?
4 days after germination.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, usually I've got my first true leaf. I know which direction it's gonna go. I've already got the huts out there. The lights have been on for a couple of days.
So you've kind of warmed the soil.
I've got it ready. I've got heat cables in the ground, getting warmed up. Actually, if you follow this page, you'll see something that I'm doing right now that, it's not a secret. There's just not a lot out there yet on it. I'm building a greenhouse, a 30 by 70 foot greenhouse. I dug a hole that big, 30 by 70, 42 inches deep, and I ran tubing in the bottom of this thing, back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. You've heard of hugelkultur, where you throw the logs, the leaves, the branches, the sticks, the sawdust, and I did that with a 30 by 70 foot hole. Not quite maybe as deep as, or as much of that as you would in a small raised bed, but I made a giant version of that. And the plan is I'm gonna pull the hot air off the top of the hoop house all winter long, all spring long, all fall long, and pull the hot air off the fans, blow it through that tube, and keep that soil warm and from freezing all winter long. So that biology of the soil will just continuously, it'll think it's in Missouri, I'm hoping. So that's the plan. So there's gonna be a lot on that coming up. Matter of fact, the USDA is doing a documentary type thing, I guess, where they're doing videos and following this along. So I got applied for the high tunnel program that they got. If you don't know about that, you need to check into that through USDA. It's a high tunnel program. They'll provide up to $9,500 for a high tunnel. And it takes about 15 minutes to fill it out. I didn't know about it. We put solar in. My whole operation, my detail shop, my house, my irrigation, everything is ran by solar. I stumbled onto this high tunnel program while I was filling out the grant to get the renewable energy grant on that, and figured out that, don't pay for a greenhouse? I need a greenhouse. I'm your guy. So anyway, built a greenhouse too.
But this is a greenhouse where you have to dig down into the ground or not?
No.
Some people have applied for it, she's gotten one.
Yeah.
Oh, Sharon,
Slick, isn't it?
must
It's absolutely something to look at. I look at it like I'm probably not, by the time I get there, there's not gonna be a lot of retirement for me, so I'm gonna take it in the form of grants today. So, and it's worked really well, it's available. Like I say, I found it when I did my solar energy grant, where I put my solar panels in. By the way, those really work. Point of use, large scale, I don't know, but I can tell you point of use, solar works. So, yeah, they really do work. So, let's see. Let's do questions, and then we'll play with some seeds, and we'll hand seeds out and all that fun stuff. Any questions?
Well, one more thing, I did notice that it looked to me like you had some pretty good wind barrier around your pumpkin patch.
You've seen the state that we live in, it's the easy one to draw, the
Yeah,
square one? Yeah.
Makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, the wind blows. They say the wind doesn't blow in Worland. Well, I don't live in Worland, I live about 6 miles south of Worland, and we don't get Gillette winds, understand, and I get it. We don't get your winds. We have no idea what wind is, but we do get a lot of wind for Worland, where I live. Wind will whip them around. By burying the vines, that does help to keep them stable. I've tried everything from the construction barrier, the black construction barriers with posts on them. I've tried that. I finally ended up getting tennis court. It's just for tennis courts or shade cloths or whatever, and putting an 8-foot fence around to keep the deer. And then I put that windbreak up there, and boy, that was a game changer.
So it really helped increase the humidity too?
It did, absolutely. You can go in there and the mosquitoes absolutely carry you away because it is more humid in there. Definitely changed the climate by just stopping the wind. And like I say, we don't get wind like you guys get wind. We're in a whole different world that you guys are than we are when it comes to
we're
wind.
nothing, go down to Rollins, you know.
Yeah, right, yeah. But you guys get a lot of wind though. Look at the hills, they're all round. Ours are jagged, so.
Yeah, no, we don't hold a candle to Elk Mountain and Rollins.
True, most things don't, yeah. Hell, I don't know, is carried or holds a candle to them, so.
I have a question on
Sure.
your windows.
Okay, yes.
Okay, cause you said, so are you growing them in a hoop house now?
I
or-
grow them in a hoop house and raise beds.
Okay, so are you dropping strings from the ceiling down?
I tried that, but I kept breaking the strings.
Okay.
They rotted in the sun and
You're
break.
just supporting them.
What I did, is she asked about my tomatoes in my hoop house. They get about 9 feet tall, they're as tall as the ceiling, pretty easy. What I did is I took 2x6s, they're in raised beds, 2 feet wide, 16 inches tall. It's just a big square wooden box, is basically what it is. It's got, wheat barrier on the bottom, filled it with the same soil as the pumpkins are in. And plant the tomatoes, got the same water line that's in the pumpkin drilled right next to them on a timer. I don't have to water it, don't have to weed it, nothing. Set the timer and manage the plant. But on those 2x6s that stand up all the way the length of it, there's about 5 or 6 of them. I took insulated electric fence insulators, screwed them in on each side so it looks like a little power line, and I ran baling twine around it. About every 16 inches all the way up. I think it's every 12 inches all the way up. So I've just got a whole bunch of loops of baling twine, and that plant just grew right up through them and just hangs on those. And it works slick. It really works. You don't have, you just harvest right here. It's nice.
You have a picture of that on your.
On Jay's Giants, I do, yeah. There should be, if you go back to last fall, just, you don't have to look at everything, just scroll back to it. There should be plenty of pictures. If not, I've certainly got them. I'm pretty sure they're on there, so, yeah.
Tell them how big your bell peppers.
Yeah, like I say, every year I pick on something. I've grown bell peppers that were 12 inches long, pepper is 12 inches long. I've gotten over an average of over 300 jalapenos per plant. I decided I was gonna grow jalapenos one year, and anybody ever tells you you gotta stress your jalapeno plants to make them hot, they're wrong. A real happy, nice, damp, green, lush jalapeno plant, the jalapenos that big on it, hot. I can't eat them. I don't even claim to be able to eat them, but the people that can eat them say they're hot. So the jalapenos will get that tall. Same with the habaneros will be bushes this big. We got over 5 gallons of habaneros off of 3 plants.
Now, was this in your hoop house?
Yeah, I grew everything in a hoop. I don't grow anything outside. Other than the potatoes are in raised beds, just a bigger version. I do them in raised beds. I put 105 potatoes in a raised bed that's 7 feet by 18 feet. Put 105 of them, 12-inch spacing, right, left, forward, back. 12-inch spacing. Put 105 plants in last year, and probably got 350 pounds of potatoes out of them. And they weren't big like I expected, but they were good. They were really, really happy and nice.
Potatoes I got this year were pathetic.
Yeah.
They were all like tiny.
Yep.
I was very disappointed.
Probably.
So on that, I have another question. You said don't go online and don't go to farm stores to buy your seeds.
Not when it comes to giant pumpkin seeds, I wouldn't, because
Okay.
these are available. If you don't have a choice, you have to, but if you do buy your seeds online for peppers or whatever, I'm a real fan, and I'm not endorsed by them, but this is where I buy mine. Johnny Select Seeds, True Leaf Market out of Utah, and Totally Tomatoes are my go-to for seeds. Those 3 is who I'm gonna check with to get my seeds. True Leaf Market. True Leaf, yep,
Is it got all kinds of seeds or
Yeah.
just?
yep. Johnny Selected Seeds. And Totally Tomatoes. Those are my go-to. That's not endorsed by them, I don't, but that's who I use, and I did very well with them. I've never had an issue with any of them, so if it's working, I don't change it.
Well, so I have a question for everybody in here. I've used gurneys for over 30 years, and I feel like they're going downhill.
Very well could be, yeah, it could
Does
be.
anybody else have
I
any
think
problems?
since they moved, because they used to be in South Dakota years ago, I think since they moved, I don't think they're as good.
They're owned by a really huge
Yeah,
corporation.
so they're owned by a big corporation thing now and stuff. It's not like it used to be years ago.
I've just, kind of left for like, since COVID hit, let me just say that.
Yeah.
That's what my parents always used to overhaul when I was growing up, and I don't even use them anymore.
No, I'm done using them, I know that.
Mine, I've had really good luck. I was fortunate enough, we have a company in town called Allied Seed. They import seed from all over, they clean it, and then they send it all over the world. And my radish, I got very lucky. We got a couple of pounds of radish seed from a guy that was one of the field guys. And they were grown for a customer in Holland. Man, I'll tell you, they are some kind of radish.
Are they hot?
No, they'll get about that big and they're like eating an apple. Oh,
Really?
just juicy, and they will get hot when they get about that big. If you catch them up to golf ball size, they're absolutely, you never can anything like them. They're so
Huh.
cool, so. But, what else can we talk about? We'll go over some seed stuff.
Your pumpkin seeds, how many years could you store them?
A friend of mine just planted some this year, just tried them out, and he's had for 13 years, and they germinated 100%. So the key to storing seeds is in a paper bag, in a refrigerator, or freezer. That's the key to it. That's what I do with them. Yeah. Or I'll put them in these containers after I dry them. I'm gonna put them in the incubator, chicken incubator, for about 10 days, and dry them down to nothing. Put them in those, seal them up, and I don't know how long they'll keep, a long time, I'm sure. Long time.
Out of the fridge?
These are not in the fridge, but I put them in the back of the shop in a dark shelf, and you just sit back there, and it's kinda cold.
They're just dry and
They
cold.
just, it's a dry and cold. Yeah. You can freeze them, they're happy being froze, it doesn't bother them a bit.
So I have to ask you,
Yes.
you know, I know you say you're a nerd and you love your pumpkins, Blanche and Sophia and Rose, and then you drop them. I mean, that just bugs me, I can't believe you do that.
Well, you know, for every beginning, there has to be an end. And I'm gonna tell you a little something, by the time you get to the end, and you're ready to blow them up. I'm ready to blow them up. I take them to schools and nursing homes and Kiwanis and Rotary, and they go on parades. They've been in the homecoming parade in Laramie. They've been all over the place, and I'm really about done with them by the time fall gets here. I'm done. Blow them up and start over. So.
You know, people with livestock that like to come and get the remains to feed them.
Yeah. When we drop them, I never have to clean up. We drop 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 pounds of pumpkins, drop them on the ground. By the time I get done loading up all the stuff and taking the banners and down, people have been there with pitchforks and shovels, and clean them all up and haul them off to the goats. Everybody likes to eat pumpkins, so.
First you climb in and save the seed.
We take the seeds out before we drop them, yeah. So, then we do a contest on how many seeds were there and all that stuff. So we do a little bit of everything. They're a great metaphor, and I like to say that the pumpkin, the giant pumpkin, is a good metaphor to get people to put their electronics down, go out in the garden, see where food comes from. You're never gonna catch a cold out in the garden. You're gonna get nothing but good by going out there. Sometimes it's frustrating, sometimes there's a lot of other things and it's work, but it's good for you. Put your electronics down, go out and play in the dirt for a while. It's gonna do you some good. There's so much more. We could go, I could do another 2 hours on soil if you want, but we don't wanna do that. We wanna get some seeds and get you guys out of here, because you're probably tired of listening to me.
So do you have contact information that we can get for this soil testing?
Western Laboratories, Parma, Idaho.
I just looked them up. You can find, you guys want the phone number? Oh, no, it's fine, I can probably look them
Yeah,
up.
they're a big outfit, easy to find.
Did they send you the bags and stuff?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
they will. Yeah, if you call for them, they'll mail them to you. I'll have a whole bunch of them. I try to have a bunch like for my home class. I'll have a couple soil tests to give away. If everybody wants more of this, come over to the whirling class. I'll have 2 soil tests to give away, and I've got kneeling pads to give away and stuff too. I didn't have room in my truck to bring them all this time, kneeling pads, so I've got a bunch of those to give away and stuff. But anytime you have a question, go on Jay's Giants. You can call me on my phone if you want. I'll give you the number if you want it. It's 307 431 1465. It's okay. Call me, fire me a text. 307 431 1465.
It's on your Facebook page.
It should be on the Facebook page, yep, it should be on there. And really, I measure my success by how well you do, not by if I grew a 1,500 pound pumpkin. I had 3 of them this year that were 1,100 pounds or more, 1069, 1153, and 1165 or something. It's a good year, no problems, but I got more out of it when there was a young man who came down from Powell and he had about a 300 pound pumpkin and his eyes were just, and that did more for me, his excitement, than anything that I did all year. So I measure my success by how well you guys do. And maybe not just with pumpkins, maybe you all of a sudden go, man, I want to grow a big tomato because I got a 5-gallon bucket and I'm going to beat Jay's state record. Please do it. I'll help you at the process of getting it weighed, whatever. If you grow one, please, please, please consider bringing it to the weigh-off. There's guys there and gals there that have grown for many, many years. Cash prizes. We have a good time. We drop pumpkins. We blow stuff up. We have a good time. So, but if you do, that is something I do ask is I'll give you everything I've got. Bring me a pumpkin away and keep our little party going because it's no fun playing in the sandbox by yourself.
You just wanna beat everybody on ya.
Yeah. So, I'll show you guys how to file some seeds. You can pick your favorite kind of seeds. We'll bag them up. We'll write on what they are. Anything else you want to do, just hands-on stuff, play with it a little bit. Leave if you want. I won't be offended. It's okay if you got to go. I get it. You want to stand around? I've got that kind of time, and I got somebody who wants to talk pumpkins. We're good.
Can we just say thank you now to those of us that?
Oh, yeah. Thank you all. And this is what makes it happen. This is what makes it work.